Hello and welcome to this episode of Counterpoint. We are gathered here to discuss a subject and a topic which probably is not in the public eye at the moment, but as most experts, people who work in the forests, environmentalists, activists, former foresters, as well as environment journalists who've seen the latest proposed amendments to the Forest Conservation Amendment Bill 2023, which proposes to amend the Forest Conservation Act 1920, which we will refer to as the FCA. To all these people, to all our experts, to all activists, foresters, other people working in the forest and studying the issue closely, there is a great sense of alarm that these proposed amendments is going to actually dilute the very purpose of the Forest Act and make forest conservation something which exists only on paper and not on reality. And this is the fear that has been expressed. Underlying this fear is the fact that these proposed amendments will actually eradicate and dilute a large section of the forests as they exist at this point of time, leaving only a small or a much truncated section which would come under this particular act. Even then, there are more and more amendments that have been included in this, infused into this, which basically takes the power of protection away and gives the state far more flexibility to cut these forests and destroy these forests with impunity, as they say, taking into account and taking advantage of these proposed amendments. That is why we are here to discuss the nature of these amendments and what are the objections that people who got into it have. We will also not limit the discussion only to the FCA, but look at the larger dangers that our forests and people inhabiting the forests are also facing. Because the forest is not just only about wildlife and trees, it's also about habitants who've been traditionally living there for a very long time. Overall, and we will go into this in some detail later, the fallout of this is that when our forests get completely diluted and destroyed, the fallout effect is massive in terms of not only environment destruction, but it leads to a complete change in the pattern of rainfall, change in the water flow. Ultimately, it'll lead to the drying up of not just forests, but water tables, streams, and so on and so forth, which ultimately we are seeing the effects of this at this point of time. We are looking at depleted water levels everywhere in our rivers, in our dams, in an overall situation which is leading to an alarming crisis of sorts. Without further ado, I'll introduce a very, very eminent panel, including those who have raised objections to these proposed amendments. On my left is Abhijit Prabhudesai. Needs no introduction. He is the founder of Rainbow Warriors, an organization that has been constantly fighting for forest rights as well as environment rights. And his very copious and extensive objection to these amendments is something that we will go into. Next to him, we are honored to have Mr. Milind Karkanis, former Deputy Conservator of Forest North, widely regarded as one of the finest minds and committed foresters that Goa has ever had. And next to him is another very, very important guest, Ravindra Velip of the Gakuved Federation. He has been a soldier of the forest people, as it were, and a guardian of sorts of the traditional inhabitants of the forest, whose lives and their liberties and their freedoms he feels and others feel will also be at stake if these kind of amendments happen in the larger ecosystem of destruction that all of us are witnessing. Abhijit, without further ado, if you can just outline for our viewers what these amendments will do to our forests.
Right. To start with, we have to look at the history of forests in Goa, and what, in brief, what you can see is, you had the Britishers who came here and brought in the Indian Forest Act 1927, which basically looked at forest like a source of revenue, a source of resources only, and completely disregarded the actual ecological services, the people living in the forest, and it was a disaster. In 1980 Forest Conservation Act, the act that we are going to talk about now, was enacted. Okay, and this had a vision of actually understanding the forest as, as being something that provides ecological services, provides life to everybody, and is so critical and essential to be conserved. And so this act has been in force for over 40 years. In 1996, a very important landmark judgment was passed by the Supreme Court, which actually defined forests. Because if you see the Forest Conservation Act, the forest is not really defined.
Of the Godavarman.
The Godavarman judgment,
yes.
12 December 96, the Supreme Court said in very simple words that a forest is something which, you go by the dictionary meaning of the word forest. So if it looks like a forest, it's a forest. In very simple terms. And so that brought in all the forest lands which were not protected till that moment. And therefore, all state governments were actually asked to identify the forests which are not protected. But that has not happened in these now 25 odd years. And Goa government also has consistently managed to keep forests out of protection. So in Goa, we are left with a situation that half of our forests are not protected. So this now, because of the Supreme Court order, still some sanity has remained and forests are not really being attacked. Okay, and this is the background where there is this massive conflict, where there are, there's a law which says you have to conserve forests, but there are a number of groups, lobbies, mining lobby, the real estate lobby, the industrial lobby, the infrastructure, constructions, etc., all of which are looking at, diverting forests and fragmenting forests and basically destroying forests. Yeah, yes, for basically profit generating, industries. Now, in the background of this, the government comes out with this amendment bill. This bill is published on the 3rd of May, and people are given only 15 days to file objections, which is completely unbelievable, because if any amendment to the Forest Act would immediately impact everybody who lives in the forest and everybody else also, all citizens. It was essential that any amendment should have been discussed at the ground level, should have gone through forest department officers and everybody who's involved in forests to understand whether whether the
so are
bill
you saying
is
there
right.
was no stakeholder consultation across
Absolutely.
the country?
Absolutely,
across the country.
zilch.
Okay.
Even when the CRZ laws were amended in 2011, there were tremendous consultations across the country with the ordinary people, and that's what gave us a good law. Here you see a very clear intent to hide, to conceal what they are doing. That's why they gave only 15 days, hoping that nobody would object. But fortunately, across the board, people have sent in objections.
Right.
And why are they trying to conceal becomes very clear when you read the contents of the amendments. The contents of the amendments are completely against the objectives of the Forest Act. Every amendment is to dilute or to remove protection of forests.
Okay, in the next round we'll go deep into the amendments, because that's very important. I'll just get the other panelists in, and then we'll again go back to what you're saying, so you can take off from where you left off right now. William, just to bring you in, Abhijit has of course outlined the basic nature of the troubles that are brewing, as he's said. As a former senior forester, how do you see these amendments, and what do you feel when you study this?
Thank you. You have asked a very good question. In fact, let us go slightly beyond that.
Yes.
You see, as has been brought out by Abhijit in his communication. We have in India 21.71% forest of our geographical area, land. 21, whereas we should have at least 33 as per some international convention. It is having only 21.71. Now, it appears that this was the situation right when the country was at the threshold of independence. 75 years have passed. We could have easily made it. We could have definitely made it, if we had the will. We could have made it 35%. We could have increased it. It still can be done because there are a lot of things which can be which are in the government's control to increase the forest area. If that is increased, if that basic forest, basic ecological wealth of the country is kept intact, then all these things can be easily done.
Right.
Is it not? This will be on freehand in dealing with this area, that area, border areas, 100 kilometers from the, you can have freehand. But where is your basic thing? Why are you dealing with the basic?
So what you are essentially saying is that these amendments, of course, will add to the problem. But the point is, why are you shrinking the basic canvas of the area
basic
of forest?
canvas has not been tried to increase at all.
Right.
That is the problem. Now, the forest was initially, it faces problem from two quarters. One is actual offender who destroys the forest. Other is the authorities who allow that.
Give permission.
So, the protecting forest means bringing that particular forest within the ambit of particular law,
Right.
which has stringent provisions. Nobody can play with that. And if somebody does, he becomes a violator, he becomes an offender, he can be treated as per law, he can be punished.
Right.
So, doing that, bringing those forests within the ambit of those particular laws is the requirement. That was done. That was done earlier. It was done in 1927 earlier, and then it was done in 1972. And we could have here the reserve forests and the protected forest, means wildlife sanctuaries, national parks, etc.
Right.
Even with that, officers were still playing mischief with the forest land. Authorities were playing mischief. So they were banned from doing that, stopped from doing that in 1980 by virtue of this Indian Forest Act,
Right.
Indian Forest Conservation Act.
Yes.
This enactment had certain effects, not much, but slight effect it had. It had some slight good effect. That main thing was that all official failings were hanged. They were stopped in government forests. Now, but still, it did not play its full role. There have been rampant violations. The problem is, violation, there is, in this new Forest Conservation Act, there is no provision to take stringent action against the violators. One thing. Second thing here is, whatever has been, means the protection of forest basically is supposed to be done to conserve the forest.
Right.
Conservation is most important aspect of it. Now, what is conservation? Conservation is biotic community. You have to take care of the biotic community. Well, Mr. Aldo Leopold was one person who has given a very good quote regarding that. Sir, I'll just read it for you.
Yes.
That quote says, "The key log which must be moved to release the evolutionary process for an ethic is simply this: quit thinking about decent land use as solely an economic problem. Quit thinking about decent land use as solely an economic problem. Examine each question in terms of what is ethically and aesthetically right, as well as what is economically expedient." Now, third important part is, right thing is right when it tends to preserve the integrity, stability and beauty of the biotic community. It is wrong when it tends otherwise. Means basic
So
consideration
according
of
to you, what's
protection,
happening now is wrong and not
because that is not being provided by this act.
Right.
Especially the amendment which is proposed, it is removing all those provisions. It is removing the areas from those ambits.
Okay, I'll come back to you, Imam. Abhinabab, you've heard all of them, both of them patiently. Yes. If you could throw a little light on forest communities at this point of time. See, because obviously the forests have been ravaged all over Goa, and you can see, and it's no secret to anybody.
Yes, yes.
Now, how has this actually affected the traditional forest communities, number one? Number two, do they have equal power or control over their lands and their surroundings? And how is that getting affected? And thirdly, how will these amendments further, according to you, cause problems further?
Yeah, see, if you see the preamble of the Forest Conservation Act, it talks about the conservation. So the question is, this Indian Forest Act, then Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 and this FCA 1980, it all came in force post Goa liberation, that is after 1961.
Right.
But the question arises is who were protecting this forest prior to that.
Right.
So it is not. It is. These are the means the tribal communities who mostly are settled in the lap of the forest. They treat these mountains, these forests as their gods, because we are having a belief, because we treat nature as our god. So whatever we are getting from the nature, we use it for, as a tribals, we use it for a livelihood, and we have some duties bound to protect the nature and those mountains. See, if you see Forest Conservation Act has only 5 sections, and in these 5 sections they are adding, means they are bringing amendments to further dilute this FCA. That means it is nothing about the conservation, but of the destruction to destroy the forest further. See, nowadays if you just go back to, or if you go on the Google Earth, and you can just have a look at it, post means before 2006, how was the forest, and just you can just change the timeline and just see what you can see on the Google Earth in the year 2023.
Right.
So you can see the rampant destruction of the forest in the last 20 years, despite having Forest Conservation Act 1980 in force. Why this is happening? Because the communities are not being means consent, that consents are not taken, because we are having the recent live example in just last April month, in our village, it's in Kavarem where I reside. So a fresh mining lease was proposed,
Right.
and without consulting the villagers, all the consents from the government and from the forest departments were given. It is only when
This is through the auction route.
it is not through the auction route.
Okay.
This is with regard to the lease which was given in the 1979.
Okay.
They had considered the government considered the amendments of 2015 to the MMDR Act, and it was considered that the lease is given for the 50 years. And the Goa government, even the forest department, gave them the consent. It is the community, the villagers or the tribal community who are settled in that village who objected and filed objections before the concerned authorities, and they have now before the High Court. That is the reason how they could manage to save the entire forest land. It is of around 70 hectares of land. If
So this is a great success story.
Yeah, that is
Yes,
what. No,
correct, yes.
so communities plays a major role in conserving the forest, and this is because and the community.
So if you can just link it to these amendments, when these amendments come into play, what you are essentially saying is there will be less and less forest to protect,
Yeah,
and more of these communities may be part of forests that are not notified, and thereby be much more vulnerable,
Yeah,
because
if you see the
they will no longer be
amendments-
protected by those rights.
If you see the amendments, they dilute the further powers of the central government.
Yes.
And it gives extra powers to the state government to directly give away the forest. And even the amendments redefines the what is the forest land. It was actually not required to do.
Right. Abhijit, now let's get into the meat of the discussion. We've broadly outlined the structure.
Yes.
If you can just educate the viewers
Yeah.
as to the exact amendments which, according to you, are draconian.
Okay. So if you look at the Amendment Bill 2023, basically what they are doing is the very first section 1 is about just defines the act.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
In that they have brought in a section 1A1.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Which is which actually defines forest.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Yes.
So this definition of forest is extremely critical. The forests have already been defined by the Supreme Court as any land which has got forest on it is a forest land and therefore protected under the Forest Conservation Act.
Right.
Now what they are saying under section 1A1 that only the lands which are declared or notified as forests, only the lands which are declared or notified as forests under the Indian Forest Act 27 or 1927 or the Forest Conservation Act 1980,
Right.
only those will be protected.
Wildlife Protection Act.
Yeah. So
72. Yes.
also 1972.
Only those states.
So only these will be
So
protected.
72,
is,
80 and one more.
and
No, not
1927.
80 there is no
Yes,
declaration.
No, the FCA.
There is
1980.
80 there is no, but there is no declaration of forest in that.
Yeah, but lands recorded in government records subsequent to 1980, if some lands are recorded.
Are recorded, okay.
Okay, so only those which are on record as forests will be protected. Now, this may seem innocuous on the face of it, but if you just go to the Forest Survey of India's report, okay, of 2021, which is the latest one. Okay, if you see the report, what it says, in Goa, in the whole of India, there are 7,13,789 square kilometers of forest.
Right.
Over 7 lakh.
Right.
Out of which 1,97,000, almost 2 lakh square kilometers of land
Yeah.
lie outside recorded forest areas.
Right.
So if you see, the Forest Survey of India's report, they are classifying forests based on the ones which are within recorded forest areas, that means which are within Wildlife Protection Act or under any of these acts recorded as forests.
Right.
Okay, and they are also looking at forests which are outside
Right.
the recorded.
Right.
And you can see 2 lakh square meters, about 28%
Will
of
lose all
India's
protection.
forest will lose all protection.
Right.
Will be free for anybody to cut the forest, to completely remove the forest.
Basically,
and
use the forest as any piece of estate.
as any. So this is completely outrageous. This is something that is unbelievable, and what this will lead to is for anybody to guess. I mean, if at one go almost 28-30% of your forests are no longer going to be protected, you are going to see complete devastation. You're going to lose all your ecological services, and it's going to be a economic, environmental, social disaster in all ways. So this is the first one.
Okay.
If
Can we get a quick response to this and then we go point by point?
Yeah,
Rather-
the important thing in this is that
Yeah.
they are saying now the report says that so much 7 lakh square kilometers is recorded and 2 lakhs is out of that.
Correct.
They are not saying anything about private forests.
Right.
This happens to be government forest only.
Right.
But private forest, if you go to see in the country, is vast.
Correct.
And that they are not bringing
So are they
into
silent on this or?
Silent.
Okay.
They are silent on this.
yeah, yes,
Absolutely silent on this. Now in 1996, the order which Supreme Court had passed on 12th December, that includes all these forests. Very nicely they have given the
that,
order.
right.
Yeah, but these amendments, they are totally diluting that Supreme Court's order also.
Okay. Ravindra, your quick reaction to Abhijit's first point.
Yes.
On the
So
whole
see,
exclusion of forests.
Yes, so actually the government at this moment may say that this way of coming out with all these amendments only for the development purpose and all.
Right.
But see, for the small state like Goa, losing a protection over the 28% of the forest is very dangerous, because see this 28% of the forest constitutes the ecology of Goa and everything. If you go to the Sangam and Kepem area, the all the forest on the mountains on the top with adjacent to the Kankon and all, they forms the reservoir for the Salaulim Dam,
Right.
and that water is supplied throughout Goa. You know, and if these protections are removed, and if for the sake of development, because of these amendments, if the in the name of development some projects are allowed, then I don't think that the Goa is going to have a, maybe, because if you see go back to just last 10 years, because of the mining and all, the manganese content and the iron contents had increased in the Salaulim Dam,
Right.
which we at that time we could see the ill effect of that. And if this is allowed, and if the forests are allowed to means to divert or then I don't think that Goa is be secured.
Right.
I'll
Abhijit,
just
your next
add
point.
something
Yeah.
to that.
And carry on, because
yeah.
the second point is also.
Because it's very interesting, though for India it's 28%, it's much worse for Goa.
Right.
The Forest Survey of India's report 2021 says
Right.
that 1,220 square kilometers of
Are
forests are
protected.
protected in Goa,
Correct.
while 1,024, almost half of the forests are outside recorded forests
That's correct.
in Goa.
Correct.
And this you can see across Goa, all the struggles, whether it was Melauli, whether it was Sangye, whether it's Lolie, Poinguni, everywhere the local communities are fighting to save forest, and a number of the struggles are on forests which are not recorded.
Right.
If you go there, you have bison, you have leopard, even tiger, okay, but it's not recorded as forest.
Right.
But yet the people are defending this, and the Supreme Court order, that landmark judgment in Godavarman, is what is the defense that the people are using.
Correct.
So that defense they are trying to actually remove and make it an open field for for whoever the real estate.
Abhijit, your second point. The second.
Yeah. So now so this is a direct assault on all the forests which are not recorded.
Right.
And now if you see, there's another section which is added, section 1A2, which is interestingly again saying that even if you have a forest, in certain cases it will not be considered as a forest.
Yes.
And so actually this is very strange. If you are saying it's a forest, how can you exclude it from the Forest Conservation Act? It's quite a contradiction. But
You're talking of that 100 kilometers of
so this
international
includes
border.
exactly. So if you have a public road, then forests on the side may no longer be considered as forest. If they're less than 1,000 square meters, then, and if you need it as an access to some other land you want to develop, you will be allowed to disregard the forest.
Right.
Okay. Similarly, if there is a forest land within 100 kilometers from international borders, so
Right.
borders with Nepal or China or whatever, 100 kilometers distance, all the forests will lose protection. Okay, then the third one that they are saying is,
so when they say 100 kilometers, you mean 100 kilometers inwards, not
inwards,
along the highway.
inwards. So
Right.
that's huge.
Width.
Yeah.
Width.
So
Correct.
it's like
Width.
it's
100
like
kilometers
a,
width.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's like a complete zone.
If it was length also you could have considered, but here you are entering in.
100
Right?
kilometers width, and the length would be like a few thousand
As much
kilometers.
as is there.
The
Length is
entire
as much as there.
international border.
Correct.
So all the forests in the Himalayas
Yeah.
are
Vulnerable to this.
no longer going to be protected.
Vulnerable to this, correct.
No longer protected. Then any forest land which is less than 5 hectares and proposed to be used for defense related projects, paramilitary camps, or public utility project. Public utility project means anything.
It could even be an
It
ecotourism
could
project.
be
quote
anything.
unquote.
Public
Yeah,
utility
yeah.
is used for anything. So,
Right.
but also generally maybe for roads for miners, roads for real estate, for.
But they've also
so-
mentioned Naxal areas and other areas
yeah, so
where you
that's
can.
so if any project is within 5 hectares, that will also be disregarded. And you're right, the last one is in the next left-wing extremism affected areas, as it's called. If there are any such projects, those also would not be considered. So this is in the Naxal area. So these are now cases where you're saying that yes, there's a forest, but we are not going to protect it, which basically is completely against the principles of the FCA. But if you look at this, it's only creating a loophole for
Right.
real estate development, for mining, for industrial speculation,
correct.
Expansion.
Bill, I have a question for you. See, you've served for so many years. You've been in the government. The point here is, from whatever Abhijit has said and whatever you all have discussed, prima facie, it doesn't seem that these amendments have been drafted by a genuine forester. It doesn't seem. Because the issue here is that, from whatever has happened and the fallout that you gentlemen are referring to, the point is these kind of amendments go completely contrary to the stated objective of the FCA, which says it is to strengthen the protection of forests. All amendments which have happened don't seem to be doing that. The whole objective of protection of forests seem to be failed.
Away from conservation.
Yes. So tell me, the thing is, now a clear and a professionally personal question to you. Do you feel that, if foresters themselves, either in the Ministry of Forests in the center or in the states, if genuine foresters put their foot down and said, look, we have come through the ranks, we've given competitive exams, we are either from the state forests or the Indian Forest Service. The point is, how could foresters come out with amendments like this if they're genuine foresters? And the issue is that shouldn't fingers be pointed towards foresters, because ultimately if you are giving up areas that you need to protect, then you cannot blame anybody else.
They can do it. They can very well do it if they are willing to do it, because the law is from their side. Power is in their hands. It is not with anybody else.
Right.
The legal power is with them only, and the possession of the forest also is with them. Knowledge also is with them. The responsibility also is with them, and what do you call it? Skill of managing it, maintaining it properly is also with them.
Right.
If they say we won't allow this, and if they are united, that can happen.
But tell me also, see what happens is, in the entire country, it is not just the forest department. You have the Wildlife Institute. You have different other organizations.
That is all together. Wildlife.
Yeah, but I'm saying that there are so many specific institutions doing specific aspects of forest management. What I'm essentially saying is that when an amendment like this is passed or proposed, apart from the public stakeholder consultation that Abhijit and you all were talking about, shouldn't there be also a stakeholder consultation with different institutions, experts, academics and others who are also there, so that there's a round of expert consultation to balance out or to augment the stakeholder consultation on
Should
the
be.
grassroots
Should
level?
be.
Yes.
Should be. True.
And that is not happening.
That is not happening. That what appears from this bill.
Right. Ravindra, a quick response to this, and also the point here is that why do you think people are getting away with these kind of amendments? Is there not enough pushback? For instance, like you all fought so much against the mining irregularities and so on and so forth.
Yes.
Don't you feel? I mean, this is not an assumption, but I'm just wondering that don't you feel that public activism against the destruction of forests is perhaps not as strong as other issues like mining and other things?
Yeah. See, if you read the Constitution of India, then it is not only the duty of the forest department or any or associated these organizations to protect the forest, but it is also a duty of the citizen.
Right.
It is people of India
Right.
to protect the nature and the these forests and all.
Right.
So I think we are duty bound as per the Constitution. We are duty bound to protect this.
Right.
You have seen the protests like in Maharashtra with regard to RA and all. But in Goa we are not getting to see such type of protest. Maybe because we I don't know, because we are always have a trend saying that maka kita padla. So because some people who are fighting in Kankona or maybe Sangem in Kepem, people who are living in Panjim have no concern for that. They may. You
feel that is happening even in the small state of Goa?
Yeah, this is happening because they are saying these people don't know anything. They are just opposing the development. They want to just oppose the government.
So are you saying that there are a large number of people in Goa who actually do not understand the sentiments of the traditional dwellers of forests, and know very little about forest rights?
Definitely, and I would say that even the people who are living in the lap of forest, they understand their duty towards the forest and the land. But however, if you move to the cities, I think these the people who are living in the cities, they are least concerned about their duties towards the land and the forest.
Okay. Abhijit, I'll draw your attention to one point. I'm sure you would have raised it, but I'm just raising it. See, the issue is now new definitions to activities that count as conservation, development and management of forest. There are many activities that are exempted from seeking approval from felling. Now the bill proposes to add zoos, wildlife, safaris, ecotourism and all these operations into the exempted route. Now there is one very interesting line in this which says any other purpose which the central government may by order specify. Now this line has been infused or inserted to qualify exemptions.
Yeah.
Or to essentially expand the scope of exemptions.
Expand,
Could you explain a little bit what this means? Any other purpose which the central government may by order specify.
So if you see section 2 of the original Forest Conservation Act, section 2 subsection 1, the explanation to it excluded certain specific activities from the need to take permissions from the under the Forest Conservation Act.
Right.
You know, and these activities, if you see the list in the original act, they are purely related to the activities of the forest department itself. So whether it's silviculture operations, regeneration of forests, or whether, you know, building checkposts or fire lines or wireless communications or fencing, boundary marks, pillars, bridges, culverts, these are all required for the management of the forest. Okay, only such activities were excluded.
Right.
But now with this amendment, they propose to expand it, okay, and like you rightly said, the last one, any other like purpose for which the central government may by order specify is so, you know, broad that the central government could allow anything, could allow mining, could allow construction of dams, could allow anything.
Within the notified forest area.
Within notified forest without having to take you know, permissions from under the Forest Conservation Act for diversion.
Milind, what is this?
Correct.
It's not correct.
His interpretation is correct.
Yeah, his interpretation is correct, but I'm saying, is this correct?
It should not be. They should not do like this, because again by this provision they are again bringing the notified forest, recorded forest in jeopardy. That is definitely not.
So what you are essentially saying is that in spite of all that we have discussed and we've put forward, this particular line essentially means that irrespective of whatever is there in the act, this line gives the government unlimited powers to enter into any forest and clear any development under this particular line.
Absolutely.
So this line actually, my point is, this line was, according to you, even if the entire amendment had only this line, it would have caused more destruction than all the other amendments put together.
Absolutely.
Right. Ravin Bab, when this happens, do you also foresee a situation where they might get into your tribal area, tell the tribal communities that we want to build a road through your area because there's an important project coming up and it is in national interest or whatever, and force you to move away and move out?
Yes, see here, I would like to bring in one more act that is called FRA, that is Forest Act 2006.
Right.
So that act actually enacted in the year 2006.
Right.
If you see the preamble of that act, it is talking about historical injustice that has happened to the forest dwelling communities who are living in the forest, and because at that time the parliament thought like we need an act which will recognize the control of the forest or maybe traditional rights of the dwelling communities of India who are living in the forest. So see, in that act there is one section. It talks about conservation of the forest. It talks about traditional management of the forest land. It talks about the rights over the minor forest produce and all. And under that act, if the community rights are recognized, then the consent from the Gram Sabha is also mandatory for like these projects. So what I will suggest that if that act is implemented and given as per the rights which were enshrined to the people, if those rights are implemented, then I think some forests may get protection despite having these amendments in place.
Okay.
But at all, I will, because even I have filed objections before with regard to these amendments, and I will say that these amendments which I have proposed are nothing but to destroy the forest further.
You also filed amendments?
Yes, I have also filed the objections.
Abhijit, I'd like to draw your attention to one aspect which you perhaps would have raised anyway, which is of extreme importance to Goa also, it would seem. It states that forest lands along railway lines and public place roads will not be protected as a forest anymore, which means that all forest lands which come on alongside railway tracks
Yes.
will no longer be under the canopy of protection.
Yes.
Is that correct? Is this what it means?
Yeah. So the way it has been drafted, what has been
What I'm referring
proposed,
to,
yeah. It says such forest land situated alongside a rail line or a public road maintained by the government which provides access to a habitation or to a rail and roadside amenity up to a maximum size of 0.1 hectare in each case.
Okay.
So what you're saying is, if there's, for example, a road, a highway, whatever, and if there are forests on the side, up to 1,000 square meters of forest land will be allowed to be diverted. If it is
Up to
required,
how much? Up to?
1,000, so 0.1 hectare is
Okay.
1,000 square meters.
Yes.
But if it's like a 3-meter road, it's like a 300-meter long road that
Yes.
would be allowed,
Right.
and the forest would not be protected. So you can
No, but
see,
are they talking of future railway lines or existing railway lines?
so if there's any existing railway
Right.
line, if there's any existing road, you
All
can,
line.
yeah, and if you want to build a road through the forest on the side, you will be allowed.
I see. So the
So-
thing is, so it's not just about existing railway lines and public roads.
Yes.
If you want to see, for instance, let's look at double tracking, for instance.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole double tracking comes under this. So
Yes,
what they're
yes,
essentially
yes,
saying,
yes, correct.
if you have to double track a railway line,
Yes.
and if it passes through a forest area,
Yes.
then that will become valid.
Yes. So this is exactly the opposite of what is required. These are linear projects.
Right.
These linear projects, irrespective of whatever is said, actually are much more harmful to the forest, because you are fragmenting. You are having a big highway of 40 meters. You're going to lose your entire wildlife.
Right.
It's
Right.
not going to exist anymore. Now, so
So they could use
if you
this to
already-
get back into Moli. Sorry to
i-
interrupt.
if you already have a railway line or a highway,
Right.
by itself,
Right.
it's such a big disaster for the forest.
Right.
Now, if you're going to allow more of the forest along these to be diverted, it's going to completely destroy all the wildlife. And what you're saying is you're going to allow other economic. See, the road is the beginning. If you allow the road, then the land ahead all gets opened up for whatever your real estate. Basically, it'll be all real estate speculation. So
Okay.
this will allow buildings to start coming up
Got it.
all around these.
Is there any other point you would like to raise? And I'll go to Milind
Yeah,
Bab and
I'm
ask
done.
them. No. Okay. Among the amendments, these are the most.
These are the
draconian.
most.
Okay. Milind Bab, quick reaction to this, the last point.
The last point, you see, they have said about this, the area which they have mentioned is 0.1 hectare, that is 1,000 square meters. They are not mentioned up to what length.
Correct.
Correct. The meaning of that provision means that complete length can be used all along the length on both sides.
That's right.
1 hectare can 0.1 hectare can be used. That means there is no limit at all. Where is the limit?
You can have multiple applications. and
Multiple
you can take
applications.
over the
It
entire-
is meaningless what IPS is. This is not. It is ambiguous wording. It is going to destroy the forests in long run.
Rabindra, once Ravindra, you of course raised a lot of objections and other things. Before we conclude, I just want to bring another aspect to the whole issue. See, what happens is that when there is so much of deforestation that is happening, plus destruction and so on and so forth, what impact does it have of things like your water resources, your rivers and so on and so forth? Because we are actually seeing Goa going through a very severe water crisis. So it is not an isolated event.
Yes.
When a water table goes down, other things go down, it is not an isolated event.
Yeah.
Do you link it to the destruction of trees and forests?
Yes, definitely, because see, this is happening all because of the climate change and the projects which are directly affecting the environment. Because see, for a small state like Goa, what Sir has suggested, Sir just told that 1,000 square meter of land.
Yes.
Okay, and we don't know how much is the length of that. So that means it's a very destructive. I'll put this only in the context of Goa. will not talk about the rest of the India, but
Correct.
for the small state like Goa, it is very dangerous.
Right.
And our water resources, we are entirely dependent on the whatever the water resources that are available in Goa. That means Salawalim Dam, it is a major source of drinking or irrigation water. And if say tomorrow, if that water reservoirs if get affected, and if the Salawalim, even the water table of just one dam, Salawalim Dam,
Right.
if
it goes down,
then you can imagine what will happen in the entire South Goa.
Because Anjunan Dam is already gone
Yeah,
down.
that is what. So we have, this is the time I think we need to be more cautious about like these things, and I think we need to come out very strong on
Okay,
this.
Abhijit, before we wind up, yes, Wilma, sure.
One important aspect of this is that you can easily understand.
Yes.
1980, the Act was enacted.
Yes.
After that, 1996, Supreme Court made some more provision in that, and it was helpful, conducive provisions it gave. 43 years have passed now. In 43 years, do you feel that this has not been violated at all? All over India?
Right.
It has been violated innumerable number of times. How many have been booked? How many violations have been booked? How many have been investigated? How many have been prosecuted? How many have been convicted? Any idea? Nothing.
Absolutely.
Important is that,
Very important.
no,
point.
important thing is that it is virtually nil. Not a single case. You show me. Hardly any case has been taken to its logical legal end. This is the condition. This is the position of this act now.
Absolutely. What
Correct.
sir is
Very,
saying,
very
I'll just
important.
add
I
to
mean,
that a
further
bit.
What is the use of the act?
Yes.
So before you amend any law, the requirement is first to see what are the objectives, but also to see the past history on the success or failure of the existing act that you want to amend.
Right.
So if what he said, what sir said, rightly he said, was done, they would have realized, for example, Down to Earth has reported India lost 6 lakh hectares. It's about 7,000 square kilometers of forest from 2015 to 2020. Second highest loss of forest in the world after Brazil.
That's very important, this point. Yes.
Second highest after Brazil in the entire world.
And
This is
nobody,
what India has
and
achieved.
nobody was called to account.
Nobody has, exactly,
Nobody.
not a single person has been booked.
The person,
very
the
important.
officer who has been empowered to do all these procedures is only one person for a very big zone. For example, for Goa, what the person is sitting in Bangalore. He had come here once. I had asked him, we have got so many violations. We are not empowered. We could not prosecute them because we didn't have power.
Correct.
So, shall I send them to you? He said, what shall I do if you send them to me? Do I know what is to be done with them? He is asking me.
Correct. Yes.
Can I go to this course of JMFC and Chief Judicial Magistrate? Can I go there?
So even if you have sentinels guarding the forest, the sentinels have such a vast area to guard.
Yes.
That is very, very difficult
That
to do.
means
it
the
in
provision
And
of
that's
protecting
why
has not
local
been given
communities
there.
are
Conservation is
important.
not there. They should provide for that first, and then they can do it. They should increase the area of the forest land of the nation first.
Correct.
They should make it 35%. You keep it intact aside. Don't interfere with that, and then I swear you can do whatever you want.
Right.
Because government needs to carry on many projects. They are important projects.
International commitment.
Yeah.
You said you're going to do 33% forest. You said you're going to be carbon zero by 2070. All of these commitments which you have
And
to
you
fulfill.
signed this up, correct.
You know, and this amendment is exactly in the opposite
Well,
direction.
this amendment, it appears that it has not given any consideration to these most important basic aspects of the ecological wealth of the country.
Okay, now before we end, we have about 7 to 8 minutes left. Let us now look ahead in the sense that these amendments are there, objections were called for, lot of dedicated people like all of you all have raised these objections. These objections have been raised with the Lok Sabha Secretariat, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
because ultimately this bill has to be passed in Parliament.
In the
What next? roadmap towards either you all being successful or not? If you are not in this stage, what is the next course of action that can be taken?
Well, the fight for forests is the fight for our survival.
Right.
So we will fight it at in every forum, at every in every level.
Yeah.
Whether it's the
No,
courts,
purely in terms of process. What is the process?
The process is we have asked them to, we asked them to give us an opportunity to meet the, I think it's a joint committee or whatever,
Yes.
and to present our facts before them.
Right.
So we hope we'll be given an opportunity, and we hope we'll be able to convince them. At the same time, I think there is a lot of work to be done in making people aware, and this program is so useful in that respect. But the roadmap would be if the bill is passed, if it is enacted, we will have to fight on the streets. We'll have to fight in the courts.
Yeah, so the option to go to the courts is very much there still.
I think we should win in the courts. It's obviously unconstitutional.
It is very costly affair. Very costly affair it will be.
Well, yes.
Correct. Of course, there is.
It will be very costly affair. Going to the court and then things, and you know what happens finally.
No, but keeping aside the practical difficulties, the issue here is: do you feel that the nature of these amendments and how you all have articulated it, and if that is the level of articulation and thought and sensitivity being applied by everybody across the country, in the tone, that manner that you all have presented, do you feel that in court there is a very strong case in favor of striking down these kind of amendments?
Definitely, it is. There is a good scope, because all provisions are against that order of 1996.
Right.
Beautiful order it is, and all
the case.
Which are trying to abrogate, they are trying to destroy.
It is really a sad thing.
Yes. Yeah, and in fact that can be a strong ground, saying that these amendments are brought in only just to bypass this
Supreme Court's order.
Correct.
Yes.
So that can be one of the strong ground before the NGT.
But as an activist, what are your plans, and how do you want to take it forward?
Maximum awareness, and I think maximum youth from Goa should take the call, because it is their survival.
But is that a challenge also? That is your hope. But what is the challenge?
I feel so, because maximum awareness is required.
Awareness is required to be done.
Correct. Okay.
Like going to villages and meeting people and convincing them about this.
Right.
And then they have to feel themselves.
Every challenge is also an opportunity,
That's
like they're saying.
Correct.
It's an opportunity to get more people involved in forest conservation.
Correct.
But it's also an opportunity for us to propose the correct amendments, like, for example, getting the Supreme Court definition of a forest into the Act itself.
Yes, correct.
That is what was required to be done, and so many other things like the
Private
local
forests in the country,
communities.
they should protect private forests also, and they should keep them aside. There are a lot of things. There is a tree credit certificate also. I don't know if you don't know that. That also can be done.
The fundamental thing is the government has tried to make people and foresters enemies all along, and every time the need is to get people and forests as one, to get them to unite.
Correct.
So that is what we need to do.
That's very, very important. Milind, before I conclude, what is the message that you would give to a young aspiring forester as he gets into either the State Forest Service or the Indian Forest Service? Because in the sense that everybody looks at the IAS and the IPS as the big ticket ones, but do you still feel that you would encourage people to join the Forest Service and do the right thing?
I will definitely. I do encourage people to join Forest Service, and I would like to tell them. I would like to request them to be very particular about performing their duties. Performing their duties as per law. If that they do, a lot of things will fall in line.
Right. I'm afraid we are running out of time, but before we conclude, a couple of thoughts. Firstly, a big thank you to all the panelists for their deep, in-depth study and knowledge of the subject at hand, because it's a very complex issue, because you are actually breaking down a lot of nuances and thoughts and ideas behind each of these amendments, because we are ultimately talking about motives and whether the motives are right or the motives are wrong. So basically assimilating this, of course, takes a lot of time and attention, and that I think that is a very good service that's being done. So all of you all who are raising your voice deserve a pat, as it were. But I think the larger issue beyond this is what Abhijit mentioned and others also mentioned, is that the forest cannot be taken as an enemy of development, quote unquote. Because the moment that happens, because since the forest is a part of nature, part of the ecosystem, people perhaps are not realizing that the destruction of the forest will ultimately lead to the destruction of the very development that you are proposing. Because in the sense that without your forests, without your streams, without your water resources, you cannot build an artificial ecosystem and carry on your work of bridges and dams and real estate and so on and so forth. And that is something which people are not realizing, because the impact of the forest is not just going to be on your trees and your green cover, it's going to affect your entire ecosystem, your climate change, your water table and so on and so forth. And that is something, that realization has not really happened.
It should be made people friendly.
People friendly, correct.
Forest should be made people friendly by government.
By the government.
Yes.
Secondly, what is happening is that, as you all have also mentioned, that the entire forest area, rather than being shrunk, should at the very least be kept intact, and ideally should be increased. Now that is not happening, because at every step of the way that pruning is being done, the pruning of forest areas. And as you all have largely pointed out, a lot of these amendments actually mean that you are not only losing forest lengthwise, you are losing forest breadthwise or depthwise, as it were, which means that more and more areas inland are going to be less and less protected. Thirdly, as Ravindra Babu also mentioned, that ultimately forests are not just only about trees and about wildlife. It is also the home of so many communities.
True.
Traditional communities who've been kind of leading their entire lives, and they're not only protectors, but they're also contributors to the growth of the ecosystem. They don't just take from there, they contribute to it. So these are sentinels of the forest beyond the official sentinels of the forest. And these communities also have a lot of community rights. They also have something we did not have time to mention. Even their land rights are not settled. Many of them do not have ownership rights, because of which they cannot fully gain the benefits that are accrued to them. So that's another subject altogether. But I'm saying in the entire ecosystem, you have to include human beings and forest dwellers as part of the whole discussion process.
Yes.
And last but not the least, when these amendments are being discussed and debated and the objections studied, one must also remember that whenever these amendments are made, the actual stakeholders who will be either beneficiaries or victims of these kind of amendments need to be spoken to and heard, which is doesn't seem to be happening. And in this case, as all of you all have emphatically confirmed, that it has not really happened. Anyway, the hope here is that, of course, the amendments have not yet been kind of notified, the bill has not been passed. So we are speaking at a stage when the impossible can still be possible.
Yes.
And perhaps let us hope that this path is undertaken, this journey is undertaken well, and at some point of time these amendments can be blocked as they should be, and the right amendments brought in, and ultimately we are talking about a diversion from a major iconic Supreme Court judgment which seemed to have been violated. And before I conclude, just one last point, and I think this is not just a fight of a few foresters or activists or forest dwellers or even the media. This whole battle will be completely lost even before it has begun, if the youth of this country, the youth of this state, are not sensitized to the long-term impact of their silence. That is very important, because the issue is that this kind of participation of the young people, the youth, is very critical, because as all of you all have pointed out, that this fight is not so much for the 50, 60, 70, 80 year olds, but this fight is more for your 5-year-old son or daughter who's got another 60, 65 years on this earth. And I think that sensitivity should be there not only amongst us, but the people who are proposing and writing down these amendments. I thank all of you for all your insights and thoughts, and I hope we are all able to conserve our forests in a better way as the time goes by. Thank you so much.